3:06 p.m. Tuesday, September 16th, and this is the late edition Podly Weekly. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our regularly late scheduled programming. I just got back from Miami on a commercial shoot, and of course was flying this morning, so could not get the Podly out. I did have the thought, though, potentially getting up a little early, but then that Chargers game, that beautiful Chargers game, took place, and that pushed it to 12:30, and I had to eventually go to bed. And for a 5 o'clock flight, things were starting to get a little messy in my head about how could I possibly do a record before a flight like that. But I think about the DVFFL all the time. I thought some insane thoughts, didn't end up doing it, and instead I'm doing it this afternoon. And in all of that doing so, we're going to do this entire show off the dome. No pre-prepared anything. This is truly observations from me. Speaking of which, let's talk about week 2. The fact that we're already in week 3, I'm just going to say it every week. It's going to be something that we talk about. It's going to be kind of stupid, and then eventually, suddenly, it'll be week 10, and then suddenly it'll be week 15, and then suddenly the season will be over. Let's enjoy this while it lasts, because things moving quickly. The fact that we're already on week 3, we got 2 weeks worth of data to go off of. It's pretty interesting. The games this week, I was able to catch partial bits of. I tried to watch as much as I could, or at least try to keep tabs as much as I could throughout the day on Sunday. And it seemed like we still don't know shit about some things. We don't know shit about in regards to some of these teams and in regards to some of these players. Some things, as we can imagine, as per usual fantasy football, those things have, we have players that were really great that have continued to stay great. We have players that were great one week and are bad this week. And we have players that were bad one week and are good this week. And that is kind of purely reflected not only in the players themselves individually, but also the teams that we have in the DVFFL. We had a handful of teams that went from feeling their oats and just I crushed week 1 to I suck week 2. Two teams that I sucked week 1 and now I'm great week 2. Some of those teams being Jesse. Jesse in week 1 put up 70 points. This week put 110 points and got the win. Peyton, right there with Jesse, scored 63 points in the first week. Scored 126 points in the second week and was the leading scorer for the week. And on the flip side, it doesn't look great for Cal. Cal started with 95 points in week 1, 76 points in week 2. Tanner, 85 points in week 1, 69 points in week 2. It's hard to still make any of these calls as to what is really the reality here, but this is the point in time in which if you have a conviction on a particular player or a particular team, this is the time to kind of act, because everyone really doesn't have enough data. And eventually, by the time we get to week 5 or 6, maybe even earlier, people will have their preconceived notions about a lot of these particular teams, and then it becomes a negotiation to get something to happen. So I say all this in preparatory for the fact that I think things are going to get weird in the DVFFL. I don't think that teams are very pleased with some of their results. I think that there is a separation happening. We have 3 0-2 teams. We have 3 2-0 teams. We have everyone else, of course, is only 1-1. But starting next week, that's when the variations go from the 3 options, essentially, of you can be 2-0, you can be 1-1, and you can be 0-2. To eventually we have multiple permutations of records that could possibly be. You can be 3-0, you can be 2-1, you can be 1-2, you can be 2, that whole thing. So I think that as teams start to see the pack start to separate, and maybe they're not in the pack that they thought they were going to be in, we're going to start to see some trades that get a little strange, pickups that get a little strange. We already started off the season with a couple of trades that were of the foresight types, if you want to say that, with the ETN trade. It's one of those things that continues to play out. And it's one of those things as well that they always talk about with fab money, is that you really want to spend your money early because you obviously get to enjoy the player the longest amount of time, considering you get to keep them for the majority of the entire season, which does make sense. But boy, does it suck when you drop a ton on a player and then you are 2 weeks later thinking about, well, maybe I got to drop this guy because he sucks. But fab money is fake money, and people are trying to do what they can to make their teams better. And there's still yet to have one of those waiver wire runs where it's clear and obvious that there's a 1 to 2 horse race for the top. So improving the team isn't really being solved so far through the wire. It seems like it's going to have to be solved through some types of trades. And I only give this kind of PSA for teams that feel like their season is slipping away from them, if they might be 0-2 or they might be 1-1 with just not the prospects that they're looking for. The season is far from over, and I feel like if anyone is talking to you, saying to you, hey, like, your team's destined for the Sacco, not the season you're having, your team's ruined, let me help you out with, I'll give you a bunch of cash for your best player. I can tell you this, it doesn't make your team better when you're giving up your best player. It seems obvious, but when you get kind of blinded and lost in the sauce of someone's throwing a shit ton of money at you, and you're kind of like, and they're giving you something back that's like, hey, that guy's like a wide receiver 4, but if I squint, I think he could be a wide receiver 2. Like, if anyone's fielding any conversations from Dill on like Wan'Dale Robinson, and you're trying to convince yourself that that's a starting wide receiver for you every single week, you should hold some. You should take a break from fantasy football. Maybe you should just shut the app down. Maybe go for a walk or something like that, because that's the perfect type of trade bait. Is like, this guy's done pretty well for the first 2 weeks. If you want to like extrapolate that out for the whole season, he's on his pace for like a 1,600-yard season. But then you have to like full big picture it and like, oh my God, this is fucking Wan'Dale Robinson. Like, we've seen many of this before. This is the Tutu Atwell. This is there's receivers out there that are just like candy. It's sugar. Like, it feels good for the first couple of bites, the first couple of weeks, and then suddenly, when you need them the most, they're like, yep, I got 2.5 points, and you're like, oh shit, I lost. And I temper those types of the players, but those are usually the first players that are getting offered up before any real value gets put out there, and let that be a notion that you should probably be investigating why that player is going up and why do they want your best player in response. So anyway, we're in full ramble mode, which is great. This is something that I only do occasionally, and not to say that there's not full rambling in usual Podly Weeklies, but I do have a bit of an itinerary, so to speak, that I want to get through. I have some bullets and some beats that I get through to kind of make it sure it's flowing, and I don't go for 2.5 hours and I'm actually making a valid point. But you all are given the gift of not that. We will still go through the nut report, and we will still talk about those things. But what I'm going to do a little bit differently this week is I'm going to have that time spent going through the nut report and the tiers, and actually going to have that be the entire segment. There's a lot to pick apart from each one of these teams that I do think is worth a little bit of more time than, these 5 teams are in this tier, these 5 teams are in this tier, these 4 teams are in this tier, and we move on. So in that focus, we're going to just go tier by tier at a time. Now, I say this continually until, roughly around week 4, week 5, when, again, these nut report rankings become more of a tiebreaker than they do, an opinion piece. But currently, as it stands, these are opinion pieces of where I think teams are going. Something that I think matters, and not to say, again, this aggregate that I'm using in my own brain about where these teams fall, this is just my opinion based on performance. This is just my opinion on what we know about the team, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the one thing that I think is very important in fantasy football is consistency. Even if that means that consistency is that, like, without fail, you're scoring like between 90 and 95 points a week. 90 to 95 points a week is still very nice. That's still middle of the pack, generally a playoff team. Last year, to score that between 90 and 95, you're scoring the 8th amount of points scored in the league, which was what Alec was scoring last year. He scored 93 points last year. The cutoff is usually around 90. Under 90 is when we start to get teams that don't make the playoffs. That was last year. Previous years, 94 was Brian. He was in 2023. He was the 8th seed with 94 points. 91 points was Brandon and Cody. They missed the playoffs at the 9 and 10 seed. Mike made the playoffs in 2003 with 87 points per game. It's pretty rare to have some under 90 point makers. We have Mike in 2023, Cal in 2022. He made the playoffs with only 89 points per game. Generally speaking, though, that 90 point threshold seems to be the mark that you needed to get to. A lot of the bigger contender players seem to be in the upper 100s. I feel like we are getting close to making a general statement that if you are averaging per the end of the season over 100 points a game, you have a pretty solid chance of not only just making to the championship, but probably winning the championship. And let me explain. In 2024, Cal led the league in scoring with 108.98 points per game. He won the championship. In 2023, I was second in the league in scoring at 103.07 points per game. I won the championship. In 2022, Dylan won the championship, third most points per game at 100.67. He won the championship. Jesse in 2021, 107 points, led the league in scoring. He won the championship. Corey, 2020, led the league in scoring, 100.6. He won the championship. I can go on and on and on. 2019, 103 points per game. That was me. I won the championship. Gare, 114. 2018, you get it. It goes on and on and on. Especially since we've kind of moved to this sleeper we've done some adjustments, and now 100 point per game, 100 point scoring games are actually a little bit more common than they were in the past. But you can basically say since 2018, if you have a hope of making it and being a champion, you have to average over 100 points per game. And that has not changed since 2017 when Dylan did it with 91 points per game. Dylan also did this again in 2016 with 92 points per game. So not really much of the anomaly that we're looking for. But I think that's a very important thing to kind of look towards, different markers that we look towards to kind of identify these playoff teams. I think consistency is one of them. You can look at the 100 points per game as another one of those markers. And currently we have 4 teams. Granted, it is 2 weeks into the season. This is crazy. We shouldn't worry about this that much. But we have 4 teams that are over 100 points per game. Not to say those are the must be de facto championship contenders, but that is the indicator. That is the threshold you're trying to cross. So I'm keeping that in mind. I love consistency. If teams are making it over 100 points, I don't need it. Even if it's 100.1 or 130. If you're over 100, that's basically like you're in the gravy zone. Like that's the place that you want to be. That's consistent right there just to get over the 100-point mark. And then for teams that are under that, you want to make sure that your variance between weeks isn't like 30 points between outings. You want to make sure that if you're like within 5 to 10 points, you can pretty much at this stage of the season, ideally more data helps, but at this stage of the season, you're like, wow, I got 93 points in one week. I got 94 points in this week. Safe to say that my average as a team is this, and then you're hoping for what does the ceiling look like and what does the floor look like, because everyone's going to discover what their ceiling and floor looks like. And I think we might have found some of those teams already that are kind of in the tier 2 space, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about tier 1. Tier 1 for week 3 is myself, Nick, Jaden, Brandon, and Christian. So the big changes here, Jaden is the new position in this group. Myself, Nick, and Brandon are 2-0. I will start with myself. Averaging 117 points a game, won over 100 again, have 10 touchdowns on the year, which isn't leading the league, but is right up there. Had a great, I think generally a pretty good week. Derrick Henry had a very uncanny week for himself with that sub 5-point performance. I kind of chalk that up to damn, that sucks, but I'm glad I survived the week with over 100 points. Brandon Aubrey is a god. That's why he's worth all $7. It kind of begs the question, and I'm not going to belabor the point because we know that, he's a very good kicker and, I paid the money for him. But it does start to make this question come to life in my head a little bit more about the draft. You think about like the amount of money that you spend waiting on some people. I'm going to call you out. I think, Mitch, you have Ollie Gordon. I think Ollie Gordon was $18. $18 fucking dollars or whatever. He was definitely 15 plus, but more money than the best kicker and the best defense available. And you start thinking to yourself, man, I'm picking up this guy. You're obviously hoping for the stars. You're like, I'm going to pick up this guy. And, he's $6. Well, shit, he's like $8. Oh, man, I'm being bid up to $10. And then you get to really start thinking like, man, he's $10. He's my running back 4 or 5, and I have a hope and a wish and a prayer that by week 7, he's putting up startable numbers, not starter numbers, startable numbers. So if he's a running back and you're getting like 9 points a game, you're like, okay, I could put you in the flex, and that's what you're paying for, and that's what you're hoping for. And by the end of the season, you're kind of hoping for something to really expand. And of course, it comes down to circumstance, situation, et cetera, et cetera. And you're spending, let's say $10 on that. Meanwhile, you could spend, $7, $8, $9, $10 on the best kicker, best defense. And at first, obviously you're going to balk at that. You're like, wow, that's kind of crazy. Why would I do that? That's a lot of money for a kicker and a defense. There's a high chance, equally high chance, that you can pick up some random kicker on random week 3, and they become like a bona fide stud for you, and they're a top 5 kicker for the rest of the year. But if you don't, and you're just constantly churning, wasting fab dollars to try to get the kicker who's playing the shitty team, and you're getting 9 points a game, which is fine, you start to question yourself, why the fuck do I have this running back 4 who I don't feel comfortable starting until maybe week 13, and he is $3 or $4 more than the best kicker available, who is going to consistently give me that confidence of what I'm looking for. And I think it's going to start to change the conversation when we get into the drafts about kickers and defenses, and maybe the money that's spent on those things aren't that bad of a deal. Maybe for too long we've been waiting and nickel and diming as a collective unit when we're like, ooh, $4 for a defense? You're crazy. And now I feel like maybe next year we'll have a situation where if a defense presents itself that is clearly and cut above worth it, maybe someone drops $10 to $15 on that. And it might be worth doing. I guess it's the equivalent of drafting a defense that you really want in like the 8th round. Like, you're giving up obviously other potential talents. But I guess the point of my long ramble on this is maybe those potential talents aren't really worth the wait when you can get something that's pretty guaranteed in a position that is nice to have an advantage in, and you never have to think about other than the bye week fill-in. So that's kind of a long ramble about the 103 points. Aubrey had a lot to do with that, and it's just amazing to watch him, and I'm so glad as a group we watched the Aubrey kicking highlights, because we could definitely say that the Giants game on week 2, he's going to add several clips to his 2025 reel. Next, we have Nick. Nick is at 104 points a game. Again, he's consistently gone over 100 in both games, 108 in week 1 and 100 in this game. He hasn't had a lot of points against necessarily against him. This is something that I'm going to key in on a couple teams that are kind of thematic, so I think paint a more vivid picture. But he had 70 points against him in week 1, 81 points against him in week 2. Those numbers are not going to cut it if you're going to try to win a game in the DVFFL. And he put up 100 points, which isn't always a guarantee, but it certainly makes it a lot more of a highly more likely chance that you're going to win. I think frustratingly for a lot of people, and I guess I don't usually hold the torch for rookies suck, but we have a rookie now who is 2 games in. He's gotten 2 Ws. He's 2 games over 100 points. And he's got really key players. He got a good draft day steal. I think, again, I talked about it in the very first Podly post-draft. James Cook for $30. One of those things that just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. The dude has 2 touchdowns, just kind of torched the Jets. Looks fantastic. Devontae Adams was basically a target hog for the Rams. Got him for ETN, $5. DJ Moore, kind of clearing out the roster. I think the big thing that Nick has to contend with is that running back position that's going to be the support of James Cook is starting to look a little iffy if Aaron Jones is going to be out for the hamstring. We've seen this hamstring thing before with Aaron Jones, where he was out for an extended period of time when he was on the Packers, and he just seems to be kind of glass-like. And if you look down at the bench for Nick, there is literally one other running back on the bench that he has at his disposal, which is Trey Benson. So when I was talking and rambling about, the Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world, well, certainly, I'm sure we'll get you. Someone will be hit up for a running back that is interested. Are you interested in Khalil Shakur? Are you interested in Jerry Jeudy? Are you interested in Cooper Kupp? All these guys are going to be available, and it's going to be interesting to see who in this market, which in the DVFFL, it seems like running backs are a higher level of a currency, are willing to give said things up for a mid wide receiver 2 to low end wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 3 in those 3 options. I don't really know if that's going to be worth this. The juice is going to be worth the squeeze there, but Nick is definitely going to be looking down the barrel of having that. He obviously can still roll with Trey Benson, but this is giving Tanner every single season, where he's like loaded at running back, and then as soon as one gets hurt, the whole machine starts to fall apart. So I think this coming week is going to be very interesting to see how Nick handles the fact that Aaron Jones is there. Not to say that Aaron Jones is an absolute engine of this entire offense, but you factor in that, we saw another bad Marvin Harrison, game. We'll see how Mac Jones is doing. I mean, Pearsall kind of survived that, but Juwan Jennings became kind of a stud. Brock Bowers is coming back from injury. There's a litany of things to look at, but I think mostly the biggest thing that I'm looking at with Nick is that running back 2 spot. Can Trey Benson be the guy, and can you be a team that's competitive with 2 Cardinals starting? With Harrison and Benson, and where will Nick get running back help, because the waiver wire is awfully thin. I think we're now starting to have teams convince themselves that the running back 3 might be an option, because then you look at it this way: well, I have a handcuff to the handcuff, so if the handcuff goes down, I have a handcuff, and if the starter goes down, well, I have a handcuff. It's kind of a win-win-win. You're kind of talking yourself into this situation at this point, and if that person can, if that player has a certain role, you're like, oh, this is killer. Next is Jaden. So Jaden, as a surprise, he's 1-1. Last week he was 6th. I had him a little higher than some teams that had already won last week, because he put up 103 points in a loss, which is always tough to swallow. And then this week he had another very tough game, and he won 117 to 116. And again, that's 2 games in a row that Jaden has had to deal with over 100 points. I mean, the first week he probably would have won, 90% of the matchups he was in with his 103 points. He just ran into the number 1 matchup with myself. In this past week, he would have won every single matchup except for one, and he ran into the guy who had the 3rd best matchup, and he barely, got the win. So Jaden is a bit battle-tested. He's averaging 110 points per game. He has a lot of points against him. He's still won. Maybe the luck will finally go to his side, but, if he had a similar schedule to Nick right now, wouldn't even be a question. He'd be 2-0, and we'd be looking at Jaden a little bit differently than a 1-1 team. We'd be looking at him as a 2-0 team that has got a lot of firepower going on there. He's got 10 touchdowns to his name, which is similar to the same number as myself and Nick. Jaden is kind of cooking right now. You can point to Bijan being a big part of that. Jaden Daniels hasn't even performed really well this year so far. I think there's a big sophomore slump that's coming right now with Jaden Daniels. I know there's a lot of discussion about coaches that got film, blah, 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 blah. But the fact is that Jaden has been cooking the way he's been cooking without having those quintessential Jaden Daniels performances is pretty significant. Deebo Samuels looks like a really great discount pick that he's gotten. Kamara isn't even the same Kamara of last year, but still, the dude continues to just get touches, and that's really what you're getting him for. And through it all, too, Jaden hasn't really gotten much from Evan Ingram. I think that's probably an area that he will be looking to improve his situation, tight end-wise. He's got enough depth, I think, on the team to be like, this is good. He might be a team that if you're playing the wise game, you'd be looking at what Jaden's got with Rachaad White, I think, specifically, or Blue, if you really want to squeeze your eyes together and say, I think there's something here. Where if you're a running back needy team, you might look into that and you'd be like, well, that might be something. Braylon Allen is a similar thing. But I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. Those are really clearly defined roles that are not, they're definitely not starter roles, but I guess you can talk yourself into a flex starter handcuff. That might be interesting. But Jaden has a lot of things going for him. I think the tight end market is probably somewhere he's going to be exploring. I'm not sure if there's anything. The wire is still young. He could probably find it there. But he squeezed out a win against Dill, who is yet again in another tight matchup that did not flip his way. But Jaden sits at the 3rd seed. Our 4th seed is our other 2-0 team, our last 2-0 team. It is Brandon. He's averaging 99 points per game. He has had wins of 92 and 105. So the consistency is there, I would say. He's got within 10, 15 points there. Like to see that it's growing. He's got 11 touchdowns to his name. His team, again, at first I thought, it's going to be totally based off of the Breece Hall of it all. But you know what the reality is? It's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is pretty significant. Jaylen Warren has basically come to life the way I anticipated it to. He can pass protect. Aaron Rodgers likes that. Caleb Johnson apparently just sucks. And Jaylen Warren has kind of owned that entire backfield. So for a discount, Brandon's discount running backs that he's got going on here with Breece Hall for $20 and Jaylen Warren for $9 or whatever is really making the Ollie Gordons of the world look a little silly, considering that guy is on a bad offense and not even starting when we had starters that were going for less money. We haven't seen a Ladd McConkey game yet. The team is obviously passing a ton. Keenan Allen, I think, has significantly eaten into Ladd McConkey's share of like those red zone targets. But at the same time, if the Chargers continue to pass as much as they are, Ladd McConkey's due for a game there. And, of course, all of us ride this tight end carousel to hell. And, of course, Brandon is the only type of person, only type of manager that can basically pick up a random one, Zach Ertz, who is, like, fine, but not something you're inspired by. And he gets a 6-catch, 8-target, 64-yard, 1-touchdown game out of Zach Ertz on a Thursday. Like, all the flags are there of, like, don't pick a random tight end on a Thursday on an away game against a good defense, and then bingo, bongo, bingo. Brandon does it, makes it work, and he's chugging along. He's waiting on Kittle. I think the fact that, and he's got Worthy out, the fact that he's 2-0 with kind of some significant injuries to some key positions for Brandon, and I think those were the areas that he actually kind of spent up for, is pretty nice. He's able to start Nick Chubb for right now. But yeah, I mean, if Worthy comes back, he's got some depth now. Brandon has a couple of options here. He can either hold his depth, which is something that Brandon does usually, or he could be in the conversation for someone who's just absolutely desperate for a startable running back. And the Nick Chubb of it all could be one of those temp guys, Jalen Warren, depending on how he's looking, could be an option there too. But, with the season and how it's going with injuries, something to consider as maybe the wise man says hold. Who knows? And then lastly, in Tier 1 is Christian. Christian is 1-1, 96 points a game. He had 102 in the first week, 90 in the second week, kind of the inverse of Brandon there. Ironically played Brandon this week, didn't get the win. I think the biggest headline coming out of Christian's team is it's obvious that Tracy is not going to survive this season as the RB1. And it's now down to this really, I mean, the reveal, I thought, honestly, with like the Tracy thing, I'm like, if he can hold him off, a couple good games early on, probably can hold off Scattaboo and Singletary and whatever. But now it looks like Scattaboo's coming regardless. Tracy was completely bailed out by his punt return yards or his kick return yards. Because if you look at his actual stats, 5 carries for 15 yards, 4 receptions for 36 yards, that math does not math up to 10.38 points. But because of the kick return yards, he is kind of saved there. I wouldn't be surprised if Tracy is kind of expelled from Christian's team. And, of course, we all have to wait until Week 8 to have that happen. But I don't think that this is a good time for Christian right now with Tracy. Similarly, not a lot of running back options on the depth chart there. Potentially, Ray Davis is the obviously the high-value handcuff here. A lot of just good players, so to speak, and using the actual player name for Josh Palmer to describe Jalen Waddle and Pittman and Palmer. Just, okay, good players. But yeah, I think Tracy is kind of the headline right here. Josh Allen didn't have a great week. I think if Josh Allen has a normal week, this could have been a really competitive game. But due to the nature of where they were at with the Jets, they just kind of destroyed them. And Josh Allen had 11.82 points with 0 touchdowns, which I think is a rare feat in general. Yeah, but I think Tracy is the big thing that's obviously creating a bit of a headache for Red right now. So that's Tier 1 again. That's myself, Nick, Jaden, Brandon, and Christian is Tier 1. We go into Tier 2. This is a kind of a mixed bag. Everyone here is 1-1, but you have different varieties of 1-1 and different levels of that consistency that I was talking about. We have Dylan, Mike, Alec, Jesse, and Peyton. Now, Jesse and Peyton were in Tier 3 last week, and we'll get to them, but they've really made the biggest leap up. Peyton has the biggest leap so far in the league with 4 spots moved up with his Week 2 performance. But let's talk about Dylan. So Dylan has had 2 extremely close games. We will probably forget it when we look back at the Week 1 when he got he got a 4-point win over Alec with 89-85. But then this week he lost by like a point or so on a really close game. And so far, Dylan's season, you gotta say, is a bit of a remarkable borderline outlier sort of situation that is happening right now. He's averaging 102.44 points a game, which is 4th in the league in scoring. he has the most touchdowns in the league with 13 touchdowns. And the majority of those touchdowns are coming from Rome Odunze and Bukabon. So I don't know how long that's going to last. I feel a little bit more hopeful about Ibuka than I do about Rome Odunze. And again, this is coming from someone who really likes Rome Odunze. And obviously I'm very pleased to see the thing that I hope that I had last year come to life. But there's just certain indicators around that Bears offense that is absolutely horrific. It's the same really scary Caleb Williams that we're getting right now. A Caleb Williams that is erratic, a Caleb Williams that is getting absolutely destroyed sometimes. And I still think there's a couple of things with like Rome that I guess what I'm waiting for is like the team to be like, and DJ Moore isn't a thing. Just straight up, not a thing. Don't worry about that guy. But I just keep waiting, if I were Dill, to be like, is Rome just a circumstance thing? Because, I mean, they're getting blown out by the Lions. So, a bit of it was garbage time. A bit of it wasn't. But I have some trepidations about Rome and how long this is going to last. 3 touchdowns to start the year is pretty good. But that's really the majority of where his touchdowns are coming from Ibuka and Rome Odunze. And I would probably, without fail, can safely say that those were probably the biggest kind of risky position groups that Dill got out of the draft. He's trusting a rookie and a second-year player on a garbage offense to kind of make this all work. And his backups are like Darnell Mooney and Booty, who he spent a good amount of money on, and we're waiting. He's got 3 tight ends on the squad. He's obviously not pleased with T.J. Hawkinson, who's also pretty garbage. But now I bet Dill is hooked in one more time. Carson Wentz is in town. I think I'm kind of in the camp of this J.J. McCarthy thing. Feels like a quiet benching, so to speak. I feel like Kevin O'Connell. I saw some people talking about this, and I was like, oh, that actually kind of makes sense, because I mean, he obviously didn't look great, but I didn't know if he was like, injury not bad. I think he just looked as equally as erratic as he did in the first half. But he just did that for the entire game. But TJ Hawkinson could benefit very much from Carson Wentz. I think the Vikings were kind of like, this is not the fucking offense that we want to run. Put a lot of money into the defense, put a lot of money into the offense. They got Jordan Mason on that team. Aaron Jones is out of the way. It's kind of all wheels up, I guess, for Dill on that portion of it. Jordan Mason's got a clear, he's got a clear path now to a lot of touches. But I have a lot of thoughts on the Vikings on the offensive end. I just think that there could be a world in which J.J. McCarthy is quietly benched for a quote-unquote, air quoting right now, ankle injury, while Carson Wentz can kind of steady the ship. We've seen it before with Kevin O'Connell just being able to work it with any quarterback, and potentially speaking, maybe McCarthy just needs a little bit more. I mean, we only have seen him succeed in the second half of a Bears game. And the Bears so far have not been a great litmus test for, that's a good offense, that's a good defense. The next team on this list is Mike. So Mike is averaging 89 points a game. Again, he's 1-1. He falls into the trap of really consistent. First week, 89 points. Second week, 88 points. So safe to say, Mike, this is your team. This is your average. So now you're looking to explore, what does the top and what does the bottom look like? This was a team that coming out of the draft was projected to be the worst, and is so far not. He has 11 touchdowns to his name, so it's more than all the tier 1 guys pretty much. And he's having a decent season so far. I think he has yet to hit a ceiling game. There's always a reason why that hasn't happened. One of the big reasons why he's having a fantastic season, I think, has a lot to do with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is throwing the ball. He looks fantastic. I mean, truly looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. And I feel like that's just so fun to watch. And I feel like we've had a couple of years of just kind of like poo-poo. That guy isn't good. And I feel like Mike's team is kind of made up of guys like this. Javonte Williams is also having a bit of a renaissance right now, obviously. He made a lot of money. He made a big trade to get him. Getting, 24 touches in a game like that, looking pretty good. It warms my heart to see Pookie doing what he's doing. So I'm pleased to see that. He's got some options on the bench. However, he did lose Eckler for the season. So another team here that is also in the kind of camp of, I'm sniffing around for a running back. Tootin is coming to life a little bit, but it's the Jags. And then Najee Harris is coming to life a little bit, Don't know how that split's going to work. Tank Bigsby, I thought was going to get something, but, I guess not. So another person that could be kind of in the market for a little bit more. Pookie is definitely playing a role in this. I just think you'd probably want to shore it up. He's not nearly as desperate, missing an RB2 starter. But, I think Sutton is still having his best days ahead of him. A.J. Brown is still playing like garbage, and that's still a world in which that can get a lot better. Laporta hasn't had a great game. He got, I think, dinged up in that week, this last week, so missing out on 52 points, only getting 2.6 points out of it. Not great. But, yeah, I kind of have a lot of optimism for Mike. He shored up with the Javonte Williams trade, which I know was one of those trades that everyone was like, huh? And I still fall in the camp of that was a lot. That was a lot for Javonte Williams. Now, in the grand scheme of things, if Javonte keeps this up for a couple more weeks, Mike gets a couple W's. At the end of the day, that's his team. Running backs do cost more. I don't think they cost that fucking much, but they cost more. And Mike is enjoying his Renaissance team. Next, in our 8th seed in Tier 2, middle guy, right in the middle, Alec. He's 1-1, averaging 91.6 points per game. The reason why he's below Mike, in my opinion, consistency. First week, 85 points. This week, 97 points. Range of the variables are there. He's only scoring 9 touchdowns so far in the year. He has had some tough games. The week 1 loss to Dill kind of sucked, obviously, to get squeezed out like that at the very end. But this week he got a nice big win, 97 points, 72 points was played against him. And Alec is making it work. The one thing Alec has to kind of look into is, are the rumors finally true about this Kyren Williams, Blake Corum thing? Blake Corum got, how many touches? He got 5 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Not a lot. But then you have McVay afterwards talking about a 65-35 split. We've heard this before. And generally speaking, Kyren has basically been able to push these things off and not have them be an issue that he has to ever contend with. But maybe this time is a little different. Kyren didn't get a touchdown this week, and I feel like he's becoming one of those touchdown. He's like one of those running backs that just needs the touchdown to really make it kind of like a great week. So only getting 8 points, it's fine. But you really, with Kyren, you kind of expect a 13+ sort of situation. The other thing that Alec really needs to solve fast is the quarterback situation. He's got Daniel Jones on the bench. He obviously wanted to see one more week, played Aaron Rodgers against a fierce Seahawks defense, and got his ass kicked. So, meanwhile, Daniel Jones sitting on the bench ready to go. Didn't obviously cost Alec this week, but Alec is going to really test the theory of, is Daniel Jones startable? Because I expect week 3 he's starting just to see, and I don't blame him. You got to, at this point, he's done well for 2 weeks. Can he do it a third week? Is this something that we can actually bank on? And if so, Alex got that position figured out. If not, he's going to be joining the Cody, who he played this week, looking for a quarterback. There are some names out there, but the names have they have significance in terms of their power. Stroud and Lawrence and stuff like that. But they're just not good. So we'll see how Alec navigates that. Jesse and Peyton, 9 and 10, round up Tier 2. Jesse, 1-1, averaging 90 points, 0.41 points per game. He scored 70 points in Week 1 and 110 points in Week 2. He really bounced back in a big way. He had 108 points hung up against him by Nick in Week 1, 69 points in Week 2. Not much of a showing, but Jesse kind of showed out with 110 points. And we finally saw the wide receiving core click all at the same time. Nico Collins got his touchdown as we were expecting him to, and Jamar Chase got, I think, 35,000 receptions in the game. Yeah, 14 receptions, 165 yards, and 1 touchdown. If this was in PPR, that's about a 40-point game, which is stupid. That's a great game, but that's crazy high. But everything kind of clicked for Jesse. I mean, Kyler didn't have a great game, but it was a good enough game. Kraft had a killer game. I think truly the only real hole that Jesse has to fill, considering he's the whole men, he does need to figure out the hole that is his kicking position. I don't know why he's keeping McLaughlin any further. There's other kickers to try out at this point. McLaughlin is not it. But across the board, he's got guys that you'd kind of feel good with. He's got wide receivers on his bench that you feel good with. He didn't have to even play Juwan Jennings, who had 14.9 points on the bench. Yeah, not much to say. Jesse, I think, is kind of hitting back to the altitude he was at. And as we talked about with a couple teams in consistency, I think week 1 we saw Jesse's floor, and potentially we're seeing his ceiling or close to his ceiling. Again, I think there's still room for him to grow, get a better kicker performance, maybe round out the flex position a little bit better. Kyler has a better game. You get an even bigger score. And then we have Peyton. He's averaging more points than Jesse, but the variance is extreme as far as I'm concerned. He's 1-1. He's averaging 94.97 points per game, only 10 touchdowns to Jesse's 11. He scored 126 points this week, which is definitely his ceiling, but his floor, which we saw in week 1, was 63 points, which is terrifying. You would love for your ceiling, your floor to be like 80 something, 85, maybe even 90 points if you're feeling really frisky. But 63 points is like an automatic loss almost every single time. But Peyton came back with a vengeance. His situation continues to sort of improve, and in the very similar and obviously funky way, Peyton has found himself in another running back situation that's working himself out. He started Achane, got through the game, another touchdown. Kenneth Walker, he stood in the flames, and he started him anyway. 13 carries, 105 yards, touchdown, 17 points. Pretty good Ken Walker game. And then you have Bill. Bill, he obviously didn't start because he's got 3 wide receivers he feels comfortable with. Michael Evans didn't do much, but Neighbors had an explosion of a game. 2 touchdowns, 167 yards. Higgins had a Higgins game, to see if he can keep that up. But yeah, Bill is now, I guess, someone you can consider out there. He's got that as an option. He still has Brian Robinson as a backup. And, in classic Pate fashion, he's got some suitable running backs that are backups that maybe could convince someone that this is an okay thing to do. But there he is with his backup running back starting to happen. So obviously Eckler is out. Drake May had a great game too, and he benched Bo Nix for Drake May. Looks like the right call. The thing that's probably going to cause a headache for Peyton is just the situation he really found himself in last year is that start-sit accuracy. He's got a lot of depth players, and it starts with the quarterback. And I don't know how long he's going to play this game of Drake May, Bo Nix. Obviously, there might be some needy quarterback needing teams out there. Cody rings a bell, potentially Alec, that could maybe solve this issue. But at the same time, maybe wise words that of gamemanship back to you teams that are looking for a quarterback. Potentially try out the free agents before you trying to make the trade for Peyton, because there's a world where the more indecision that Peyton has, there's worlds where he doesn't win week to week, and if you're kind of in the thick of it right now, you want to make sure that your opponent is always having a hard decision to make every single week. And Peyton, by the nature of having a pretty pretty big gas team with depth, has created the same situation that plagued him last year. So personally, I would be like, let me just try out a free agent quarterback for a couple weeks before I make the call. I'm like, I need to get Nix or I need to get whoever off of Peyton's team, because in the meantime, there might be a matchup mishap here. The wrong person starts, and suddenly, Peyton's on a dark path once again. So that's tier 2. We have Dill, Mike, Alec, Jesse, and Pate. That rounds out our tier 2 hopefuls. Tier 3 is a completely darker place. This is a place that has 3 0-2 teams and one 1-1 team that truly should be an 0-2 team at this point. Our tier 3 teams are Cal, Tanner, Cody, and Mitch. In this case, the particular order is really based off of just vibes. Cal has the lowest amount of touchdowns on the year. He has only 4 to his name so far throughout the year, which is crazy. He is 0-2. He's averaging 85.91 points per game. 95 to start the year, 76 to start the second week. He got blown out in both games. Both times, he had his opponent scored over 100 points, hence why he is leading the top of this tier. It's not much to say, but, it's still something to note that, when your opponents are scoring over 100 points against you, that's a challenge to face. You have to climb this mountain, so to speak. But there's Cal. 76 points this week was not great. He lost to Pate. And we got a great Puka game. We got a great Pickens game. Sometimes those things aren't going to happen all at the same time. I think the one thing that is kind of setting in for Cal is this budget team isn't going to work. He has fallen into the QB carousel that is a nightmare. Justin Fields has a great week 1. Doesn't start him, loses. He starts him this week, concussed. So, Dak Prescott. And inevitably, Dak Prescott will have some garbage game in week 3, and it won't work. I'm surprised for a man who just made a big trade for Pickens why he wouldn't just do the stack I'm not saying the stack is a requirement, but you made this move for Pickens, so you obviously have hope in Pickens doing well, and yet you didn't start Dak. Now, you could have seen, I mean, Fields had a great week 1. I hope that decision was tough. And obviously, in hindsight, with him going out with a concussion pretty early in the game, it looks bad. But from just, again, the strategy point of view of like, oh, I love this wide receiver. Who has his quarterback? I do. Well, I guess I'll bench him one more week. So regardless, Dak is coming out. He's coming out to play. The rookies, there's question marks, I think, is another thing, too. Warren is great. Tight end, that's solved. Travis Hunter and Harvey, they are playing kind of key spots right now for Cal. I suppose maybe Cam Scattaboo becomes a thing, so that way he can swap one rookie in for another rookie. It's really hard to say. Again, you're relying on technically the RB2 on the Giants to be the savior, not the RB2 on the Denver Broncos we were supposed to be cooking, which they are not cooking. You're hoping for that. Still waiting on Rashee Rice for several more weeks. Rashid Shaheed doing things, but not making it on Cal's team. I'm not entirely sure why. So maybe there's solutions here to the Travis Hunter and the RJ Harvey. I do think, though, that this is starting to become a carry situation right now. I think that Cal is going to be kind of plagued with some thoughts this week, unless, of course, we see a wild and crazy Cal with the wild and crazy trades as he tries to desperately right the ship of his team. But I could definitely see Travis Hunter sitting on the bench for this week. I could definitely see RJ Harvey sitting on the bench this week. I could see Fields sitting on the bench this week. And we're trying out Scattaboo. We're trying out Shaheed. We'll probably make a trade. We'll probably blow our budget, to try to get someone. I don't know who. But Cal is definitely a man that will not let his team rest at like 0-2, 0-3. It is giving some past years, though, right now. Cal last year started 1-1, obviously won the championship then. But in 2023, the season that it's really giving right now, and though he did make a bit of a recovery jump back up, in 2023 he didn't get his first win until week 5. Not to say that's what's going to happen here, but the stats that are underlying this team, the situation underlying this team is not positive. 85 points per game is not great. 4 touchdowns to your name is not great. Some of these players are not playing well. Travis Hunter, it looks like he's just playing defense now. And even when he plays on defense, he's bad. He's playing on offense, he's mediocre. I'm in the camp of like, this would be fun. This would be so cool if that was like a thing that we could see. Like, that would be amazing. And whether it's the Jag situation or maybe he's just not cut out at this point for the NFL, the straight. I mean, like, they showed a rep on Red Zone of him guarding T. Higgins, and like he barely pushed T. Higgins out of the way, out of bounds. And they're like, what a rep from Travis Hunter. I'm like, that dude is losing every fiber of his strength to shove this man who's much larger than him barely out of bounds in time before he catches the ball. And it was like barely. And I'm like, every rep that I've seen on defense of other plays, it seems like every offensive player playing against him can catch the ball, turn, look, and it's up to Travis Hunter to make some catch or some tackle, and he doesn't do it very well. So I don't know if the Jags know what they're necessarily getting out of him, but I feel like they're kind of compelled because they spent 2 first-round picks essentially to get him. They got to figure this out. And I just don't think – I think it might be time for him to figure it out on the bench. Then we have Tanner. Tanner is at 77 points per game. He's 0-2. Week 1, 85 points. Week 2, 69 points. So that's going the wrong direction. He's got 5 touchdowns to his name. He's sitting above 2 other teams right now. I feel like there is – I don't know. He has gotten a lot of money. So I guess you could talk to yourself and say, like, well, if the end of the season and if things don't go well, at least we're all the way on our way, and we've sold off some minor pieces, and the rest of the core team is looking pretty good. But I think at this point we're going to see a world where Tanner is going to be coming aggressively spending, and all that money he's added, he's going to be trying to buy back because I don't think he can have a season where he is bad. We had that a little bit last year. And I don't think we enjoyed that very much, speaking as a collective we here for Tanner. But I think he wants to go back to his playoff ways. He's got a team that has the names, but I don't know if it's going to come through. I'm going to say it. Genty is in the same camp as Amarian Hampton, is in the same camp of a lot of these rookie running backs that are high-profile guys, Trayvon Henderson, RJ Harvey. They're not playing well. I think that Genty is having He has runs that I'm like, whoa, you made something out of that. You made that a 2-yard gain, and it took 7 yards to do it. His line is not doing him any favors. He is getting absolutely blown up at the backfield. He's doing everything he humanly possibly can to get out of these situations. But alas, you can only overcome the line for so long. We haven't seen just like a big, I think Gen T is kind of profiled as like obviously generational running back talent, can do anything, workhorse, what you want. But the thing that he did a lot in college is just these big home run hitting runs, like the Saquon Barkleys of them all. Like give him a little bit of space, give him a little bit of a gap, he's gone. It's a touchdown. Haven't seen it yet. I mean, it's 2 games, haven't seen it yet. I don't know if that line for the Raiders can do it. A lot of his catches, 3 receptions for 1 yard. He was being caught behind the line every single time. I don't know why that the Raiders and Chip Kelly's infinite wisdom is like, well, we're not getting any push from our line. Why don't we give the running back the ball behind the line and see what he can do over there, with no blockers, and he's getting blown up. So I feel like they're due for some level of fixing of that. But in the meantime, there's just some underlying questions that are going on with the team. Chase Brown, see how he's affected with this Burrow thing. You'd assume that means more running, and he completely owns that backfield, but we'll see. Zay Flowers, it's a typical Zay Flowers game. I mean, I feel like this is what you paid for or didn't pay for to get him. There he is. Devonta Smith, you would expect so much more from no Goddard. You'd have the stack with Jalen Hurts, and it seems like that's just useless. And Calvin Ridley, I'm just curious to see what that Tennessee offense looks like when it's not playing some of the better defenses in the league. They played Denver and they played the Rams. I'm pretty optimistic on Cam Ward, but it's hard to say that when you just these defenses are just destroying them and the offense doesn't look good. So Calvin Ridley looks bad. He's got Bosgod though, which is good. And the Texans D, I was all in on. I mean, I thought they were the best defense. That was the defense that I wanted this year. I think a lot of people wanted the same. And I would say at this stage, you're kind of like, oof, that's not the defense I expected to have. So maybe they've just hit the nature of who they've played so far. Maybe the offense for the Texans is just that fucking bad that it's going to make it really hard for them to do well. I think the brightest light that Tanner has right now is Judkins sitting on his bench. I'd assume that he might probably scoot himself into the starting lineup at some point. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Tanner starts to get a little bit more spendy with the money he's gathered. He's got some bets that are holding him back. I'm one Chargers game away from winning $5 from the man. So I'm looking forward to getting that money. And go Bolts. Now, 2 sad teams, really sad teams. We already had some sad stories. We have some even sadder stories. Cody, 1-1. Now, the only team that's here, it's 1-1. He's averaging 73 points per game, which is not the lowest in the league. First week, 75 points. Second week, 72 points. So the thing with Cody is I don't know if this is a product of, is this the floor that we're looking at? We've just seen the floor twice. Or is this the average and the floor could even be lower? And it's hard to tell. Obviously, Burrow is gone. I mean, render him gone. So that's a huge blow. It's a bummer, too. No one wants to see that. Burrow's fun. And I think Burrow is going to kind of fall into this weird camp. He's had some seasons absolutely wrecked by injuries. And, these injuries seem to be, they're significant every single time. So this is a real bummer for Cody. Because any kind of hope kind of fell on, like if Burrow can come back to the player that he was last year or just continue that, then Cody's team is a little bit of a different animal. And right now, without Burrow, he's in the camp of looking for a quarterback, and his backup was JJ. That's going to the bench. That's going to the YR, I should say. And my fear is that Cody is going to start to over-index in Steelers. As we know, the more Steelers that Cody collects, the worse the season is going. And so far, we're right on track. We have Jonnu Smith, the tight end, who is on the bench. We have Kenneth Gainwell, and we have Caleb Johnson. So we are deep at 3. I feel like if Aaron Rodgers gets dropped and the wire doesn't look good to Cody, Aaron Rodgers could be on the team. Suddenly we have 4 Steelers. Suddenly, maybe there's an inkling of a hope of a wide receiver on the Steelers that's looking good. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. But I worry that the more Steelers that are collected, the worse it's getting. But, he's got Justin Jefferson still there. DJ Moore did nothing. Keenan Allen's looking pretty good as a pick. But I think the biggest issue that Cody's got to address is this quarterback situation. He's not going to be getting any help from this bench, so at least he's going to have some roster spots open to make some of those decisions. He picked up Troy Franklin, which is kind of nice. But Golden, another big pick of his. I think he was, $15+ That's looking like that's going to take some time to get to cruising altitude. He put a lot of money down on Fannin. I have hope for Fannin still, so that's not the end of the world. Fannin the Flames, I do like as a name as well. That's high quality stuff right there. But yeah, Cody's whole focus right now is finding a QB to fill the hole that is left by Joe Burrow. And our final team, the team that has continued its losing ways since last year, in a long period of last year, we have Mitch, who is 0-2, final team here, scoring the least amount of points, 72.83 points a game. He had 63 points in week 1 and 81 points in week 2. Maybe 81 points is the average. Hard to say. We definitely know that 63 is the floor. He's got 7 touchdowns to his name, which is absolutely crazy considering Cal scoring more points, Tanner scoring more points, Cody scoring more points, and all of those teams have less touchdowns than Mitch. 7 is kind of a tier, it's not even in tier 2 numbers. It's just a tier in all in itself, but that's a concerning thing. Like you got the touchdowns, which are automatic point getters, and the points are not coming at all. Where do the issues begin? Well, he's invested a lot in the Lions. So last week it was like, well, the Lions are, that wasn't a great game. And then they came out against the Bears and they taught. So Jared Goff, 33 points. Gibbs, 16 points. If you're reading down the roster in line, you're like, whoa, let's go. That's a lot. And then when you consider that if you combine those two scores, 33 and 16, that's 49, roughly 50 points between two players. And you look back and, well, Mitch only scored 81 points this week. That means 31 points came from the remaining 7, if I'm doing that math right. No. Yeah, 7 players. 30 points from 7 players really paints the dark picture that Mitch is in. Let's talk about it. Pacheco sucks. Shouldn't be playing anymore. I don't know how it's time to start something different. Brian Thomas, 12 targets, 4.9 points. Injured potentially. Don't know. Not great. Terry McLaurin, fucking bust. No one's talking about it. Gets his money. Obviously want him to get paid. He has not performed well. Deebo Samuel is pretty much everything. That whole Commanders offense is not looking great. But Terry McLaurin in particular, not looking great. He is one of those candidates where someone's going to trade for him thinking you got Terry McLaurin from, I don't know, a couple years ago. And we got to remember, Terry McLaurin was at his absolute best after, 7 years in the league was last year. Like, he isn't necessarily a prolific wide receiver. Last year, he finished 5th with 13 touchdowns. Previous finishes through the other 5 or 6 seasons he was here, 29th, 14th, 24th, 23rd, 24th. So if you think you're going to get the 5 as he gets older with Deebo and all the other situations that are going on with the Commanders, you're just wish casting at that point. Like, I think if you're trading for McLaurin and you think that you're going to get a top 5 wide receiver out of him, you should more realistically look towards like the early 20s, maybe mid 20s at this point, considering the situation that he's in. And in all of these situations we're talking about, like his rookie season, he only played 14 games, played 15 games. The rest of the seasons we're talking about, finishing 24th, 14th, 29th, and 5th, he's played all the games. So it's not like, he got injured, that's why he went down. No, he's there. So Terry McLaurin has sucked, objectively, and that's not helping. Trey McBride, he's good. We like him. And then Drake London, I like Drake London. Obviously, the injury is not great. So, like, the wide receiving core on paper is great. But the real conundrum that hits the brain is Mitch is a big hater of the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know what source this man was using this week when he wanted to start the Cowboys defense against the Giants. I don't necessarily know. I obviously get it. Like, hey, the Giants look like shit in week 1. So did a lot of teams look like shit. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to go out of my way and like get one of the worst defenses to play against him. The resume for the Dallas Cowboys defense is horrific. I mean, this is a man who theoretically is rooting for the Packers, who knows that the Cowboys lost their best defender in Parsons to the Packers. He knows that at least from the sleeper updates that we've been receiving, that Deron Bland is hurt, which is their other really good player. And the rest of the team just kind of generally sucks in general. I mean, like, there's some fine-ish players, but, like, the defense is not the core part of the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, it's the offense that everyone's talking about. He starts them against the Giants. Obviously, he wasn't anticipating 37 points to be hung up against them. But I just think, like, it's just a baffler. Meanwhile, you have the Chiefs, who are going to make every game ugly. They're a defensive team at this stage. You know that if they don't have any high-powered offensive skill position players, like Worthies, the ones that are going to make this a shootout, all they want to do is long drives, 13-play drives, and the defense is going to do the exact same thing to the opposite team, and they're going to try to lower the score. And there are the Chiefs sitting on his fucking bench, an actually good defense that has been a good defense for 7 years now, 9 points. I mean, you'll take 9 points. Not to say this is going to affect the outcome of said game. It would have brought this to a 7 or 6 point loss to Nick. But you start putting those things together, and you can start to rectify this. But negative 2 points from the Cowboys defense, hilarious. 37 points allowed, 506 yards allowed, 3 sacks and 1 touchdown, one fourth down stop. Hilarious, horrible choice of a defense. And so I don't know where, like, Mitch is just deep in his own head at that point if he's thinking the Cowboys are a viable option. They're not. And in fact, if anyone starts the Cowboys defense for the rest of this year, you're just absolutely you're begging for something horrible to happen. And this was a situation right here where you got what you wished for in the worst way. And I just don't understand it from the pot stirring standpoint of, like, fuck the Cowboys. I hate the Cowboys. They're so bad. They're such trash. And then you start the defense like crazy. So that's why, Mitch, you're 14th. So tier 3, Cal, Tanner, Cody, and Mitch. And that's the tiers. That's truly the tiers. And that was my rambles. So went for a little long on that one. Kind of went through every single team. Again, a lot to still learn. Next week, we can kind of get more information. Again, the remaining schedule portion of the nut report would be there. Possible seeds. We start talking about, fucking playoffs. A little early for that. But, the permutations of options here go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 5 different options. And eventually, as the records kind of expand even further as a spider, we get even more and more options from there. But all this to say, and very, very much happy to have fantasy football back. It is a joy, I have to say. I was traveling on Sunday, and I was able to watch a game on the back of the monitor for on the plane, and I had my laptop open, and I was able to stream Red Zone, and I was like, I can't do anything else. I'm literally stuck here in this seat, but I've got football on this screen. I got football on this screen. I have my phone up for the scores. It was like I'm literally in like Mecca for a second, and I was only like I had 35 minutes before we landed, and that was when the game started. I was like, this is heaven. And then you go on to the flip side of me, 5 a.m. flight this morning, staying up until basically, almost 1 last night to watch football again. Football, as we always say, especially the DVFL, it's bad for your health. And that's why we do it, because it's too much fun. And it was a blast. It was a blast. The whole weekend was a blast to have football in these various ways. I haven't traveled with football like that before, and it was lovely. Really quite nice. It felt like I was in the Red Zone studios with them. All right, that's it. I'm done. No more. Goodbye.